My name is Katie West, 22 years old. At my grandmother's 81st birthday dinner, right in front of 9 relatives, my mother slammed her hand on the table and sneered. $1,300 a month, and you still dare to complain. You're so ungrateful. I wish we had spent that money raising your brother instead of you. My brother Cameron just smirked. 28 years old, paying nothing. While everyone else stayed silent, I didn't say a word. I finished my plate, went upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, and left the next morning. I left my childhood key on the counter, like it was nothing. 30 days later, an envelope from the credit union hit their kitchen table. My mother called me 14 times that night, crying, screaming, then begging. She had no idea that humiliating her own daughter would be the biggest mistake of her life. Welcome back to Revenger Episodes. We tell quiet stories about ordinary people who hold their ground without ever raising their voice. Drop a comment and tell me, have your parents ever treated you like a burden while spoiling your sibling? Be sure to subscribe because what happened next was ice cold and deeply satisfying. Let me take you back to the room I had been paying rent for. The house sits on Glenmere Lane in Westerville, Ohio. Tan brick, 2 stories, a maple tree my father planted the year I was born. My mother used to point at that tree when prospective buyers came over. The few times she let her own clients see her house. Look how it shades the front room in the afternoon. She had a way of making the house sound like a small inheritance, which in her mind it was hers to dispense, to bill against. I lived in that house from the day I was born until I was 22 years old. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, north corner, pale blue walls. My mother painted herself in the late 90s because she had seen the color in a Pottery Barn catalog and decided it was soothing. The desk under the window was a hand-me-down from my grandfather, Earl West, who had used it to keep his ledger when he ran a small electrical shop in Newark, Ohio in the 70s. The closet door in my room had been crooked since I was 11. My father said he would fix it. He never did. By the time I turned 22, I had stopped noticing, which was its own kind of injury. Down the hall was another bedroom. The rules in that room were different in every way that mattered. My brother Cameron is 5 years older than me. By the time I was a senior in high school, his room had 2 computer screens, a standing desk, a leather chair he had not bought himself, and a sign on the door that said in session, "Please knock." My mother called it his office. We were not allowed in. Cameron was, depending on the year, launching something or pivoting something or exploring a partnership. In 2024, it was a food truck, Grill Cart Columbus, which served what he called next-generation street food. In late 2024, it was an online store called Apex Drop, which sold imported phone accessories. By the summer of 2025, both were quietly dead. None of us were allowed to say so out loud. What Cameron did not talk about was the remote IT contracting job he had been working since 2022. It paid him about $78,000 a year steady as a desk job, but it embarrassed him. He wanted to be a founder, not a contractor. My parents wanted him to be a founder, not a contractor. So everyone agreed by silence that the contracting income simply did not exist. The Tacoma in the driveway, a 2024 model, brand new, had to come from somewhere. Nobody asked. I knew before I knew that something was paying for that truck. I just didn't know it was me. The tilt in our house was not a single decision. It was 1,000 decisions. Cameron's college tuition was paid in full from a private bank account my parents had set up for him. I went to a community college and transferred to Ohio State as a commuter, paying for it with a Pell Grant, a part-time job at a coffee shop on Lane Avenue, and modest federal loans I am still paying off. Cameron's 18th birthday came with a check. Mine came with a card signed by both parents but in my mother's handwriting. Cameron went to Asheville for spring break. I worked summer retail. None of this was hidden. It was simply explained. My mother had a phrase she used the way other mothers used "I love you." She would say, "We're not a charity, Katie. We're a household." I heard it the first time when I was 16 after I asked if I could go on a school trip to Washington that cost $400. I told myself when I was 16 that it was just how families worked. I told myself that until I turned 22. Grandma Eileen saw it. Eileen is my father's mother, 79 years old at the time this story starts, 80 by the end. She lives in a small senior community in Worthington. Her late husband, my grandfather Earl, died when I was 12. Eileen never said anything out loud, but every time Cameron got a check and I got a card, she would look at me for half a second longer than she needed to. She would put her hand on my wrist when she passed a dish at dinner. She would call me Catherine, my full name, in a voice that meant something specific I have not been able to name even now. I did not know it then, but Grandma Ian's 80th birthday was going to be the last dinner I ever ate in that house. I started at Buckeye Heritage Credit Union on Monday, February 10, 2025. Member services teller, $400 to $2,800 a year. It was my first salaried job. I had finished my Ohio State degree the December before. My mother had hugged me on graduation day. My father had given me a card. Inside the card was a printed-out spreadsheet, 2 columns wide, titled Household Contribution Projection. I did not understand what it meant at the time. I do now. On my first day at the credit union, my supervisor, Linda Voss, walked me through the back office procedures. She was in her mid-50s, kind by the book. Her hair was that careful Ohio gray that women maintain because their mothers maintained it. She told me on day 1 that a credit union is the kind of place where "I'll fix it later" is not a sentence. Either the numbers match by close of business or they don't. There is no negotiating with a ledger. My coworker Brooke Calder, who would later become the closest thing I had to family, gave me a coffee mug with a cartoon dog on it that said, "I balanced today, ask me how." She was 23. She was also from Westerville. We bonded fast. I learned on that first day, to be precise, with money at work. I would soon learn that my own family had been counting on me to be the opposite. The household meeting came on the last Sunday of February. My mother called me into the dining room around 6 o'clock in the evening. My father was at the head of the table, half watching a basketball game on his phone. Cameron was upstairs, supposedly working. My mother had 3 sheets of paper laid out, printed rental comps from Zillow, stapled together with the same blue paperclip she used for closing paperwork at her brokerage. She set them down in front of me like a listing presentation. "Sweetheart," she said, "you're an adult now. You earn a real paycheck. Adults contribute. That's all this is." She tapped the comps. $1,300 a month, she said. Below market generous. An outside landlord would charge $1,500 for this much space with laundry included. I looked at the comps. They were technically real. They were technically nearby. I said I would pay for it. Then I asked about Cameron. The temperature in the room dropped 4 degrees. Cameron is in a different phase. My mother said he's reinvesting in his business. It's not the same situation. My father did not look up. He mumbled something that might have been an agreement. My mother used the word season. She said Cameron was a builder and I was an employee. She said, "You can't compare those two things." She said it the way a real estate agent reads a disclaimer. I did not push. I nodded. I said I understood. I did not understand. I filed the moment. Then I told her I wanted a written receipt for each month's payment. My mother laughed. She actually laughed. A short surprise sound like I had told her a joke she did not get. "Honey, this isn't a business transaction, it's family." I repeated the request calmly for my own files. She agreed, irritated. On my way back to my car, I stopped at a Target on the way home. I bought a blue manila folder for $429. I labeled it Rent 2025 in pencil. I stapled the Target receipt inside the cover. Brooke later joked that the folder looked like a bank examiner had brought it home. My mother thought the folder was an insult. I thought it was insurance. Only one of us was right. On Saturday, March 1st, 2025, I sent the first $1,300 by Zelle. Memo line, March rent per household agreement. My mother signed a paper receipt that said, "Received from Katie West, $1,300 March 2025 housing contribution." She signed it with a sigh I could hear from across the kitchen. Cameron walked through during the exchange. Protein shake in hand, said nothing, walked out. I filed the receipt and the Zelle screenshot in the folder that same night. That was payment 1 of 8. By the time payment 8 cleared, I would already know more than my mother thought possible. By April, I had a phrase for it: rent month. Everything else got planned around it. On Brooke's birthday in May, I went to dinner, but skipped the cocktails. A college roommate, Rachel, sent me a wedding invitation in June. I had to send my regrets. The smallest gift on her registry was $42, and a $42 gift would have pushed my checking account under $300 for the second week of the month. I pinned the invitation to Brooke's corkboard instead of taking it home. It felt safer there. Cameron's life, by contrast, expanded. The Tacoma got detailed at a place in Polaris that charges $200 for a basic wash and wax. He took a long weekend in Hocking Hills with 2 friends I did not know. He bought new equipment for the Apex drop launch, a ring light, a camera tripod, and a backdrop. I never asked where the money came from. I should have. I would later learn that the answer had been sitting on a public website the whole time. I told myself this was temporary. Then May arrived. It was a Tuesday in the middle of May. I came home from work around 5:30. The kitchen was empty. The mail was on the counter the way it always was, in 2 piles. Bills on the left, junk on the right. Half tucked under Kohl's catalog was an envelope I had never seen before, cream-colored. The corner of the return address was visible. The logo, a green oak leaf with the words Buckeye Heritage Credit Union beneath it. The same logo that was printed on the name tag I had been wearing all day. The envelope was addressed to Wayne West. It had already been opened. The flap torn, not slit clean with a letter opener. The page inside was folded loosely, and the top third was visible. I did not pick it up. I did not unfold it. I read only what was already exposed. The visible words were ordinary enough on their own, regarding home equity line of credit accounts, ending in and below that current balance of approximately. My mother walked in from the den before I could read another word. She moved fast, faster than I had ever seen her move toward the counter. She picked up the envelope, tucked it back under the catalog, and laughed a small, dry laugh. "Oh, that's nothing," she said. "They send those when balances change. I'll deal with it. Leave it." I leaned against the counter, set my purse down, and asked her if she wanted me to start the rice for dinner. She said yes. We did not mention the envelope again that night. My mother had answered a question I had not asked. That's when I knew the envelope mattered. I did not look at the envelope again. I did not need to. That weekend at Brooke's apartment, I sat on her couch with my laptop and did something I had never thought to do before. I went to the Franklin County Recorder's public record search. It is a free website, no login. You can type any address in Franklin County and pull up every recorded document on the property. Purchase deeds, mortgages, liens, easements, the whole paper trail. I typed in my parents' address on Glenmere Lane. 2 mortgage liens appeared on the property. The first was the original purchase mortgage recorded in 2009. Lender PNC Bank N.A., since transferred to a server in Pittsburgh. That was the mortgage I had grown up hearing my parents call the mortgage. The one my mother said her career paid for. The second lien was something else. It was a home equity line of credit. Recorded date, April 17, 2024. Lender, Buckeye Heritage Credit Union. Principal amount, $62,000. I read the line 3 times. I closed the laptop. I did not log into any internal system at work. I did not look up my parents' account number. I did not need to. The recorder's office had given me everything I was legally allowed to know for free from the comfort of my friend's couch. That night, I did the math on a Post-it note at Brooke's kitchen table. A $62,000 Helilock, at the rates we were quoting that year at the credit union, would have a monthly payment somewhere in the $500 to $600 range. The main mortgage on a house of that age and price would be running $1,400 a month, give or take. There had been an escrow shortage letter on the counter once, I remembered now, and that adds another couple hundred a month for the catch-up. The total monthly housing burden on that house was well above what my father's salary alone could comfortably carry, especially with my mother's commission sliding through 2024 and 2025. My $1,300 a month was not going to my own keep. It was going somewhere, and whoever was on the receiving end was counting on me to keep paying. I shut my laptop. I did not look up their account. I did not need to. I already had enough to know I did not know everything. The Post-it went into the blue folder. I had 5 months of payments left before I would understand the rest. I made every one of them quietly. The dinner was set for Saturday, October 25th, 2025. My grandmother Eileen was turning 80. My mother had been planning it for 3 weeks. Good china came out of the cabinet on Friday night. The roast was bought from the butcher in Clintonville my grandfather used to go to in the 70s. My mother considered this a thoughtful detail. It was expected that the thoughtfulness had to be announced 3 separate times in 3 different rooms. On Tuesday of that week, October 21st, I sent my mother a text. I had thought about the wording for 2 days. I kept it short. Hey Mom, could you send me an itemized breakdown of what my monthly contribution covers for my files? Thanks. I sent it at 11:14 at night after work, after a long shift, when my brain had finally found the words. My mother's reply came 12 minutes later. You don't get to demand a breakdown like you're auditing your own family. I screenshotted her reply. The screenshot went into the blue folder. That was Tuesday. Saturday was 4 days away. I went to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I balanced my drawer every shift. I did not text my mother again. I assumed the matter would be discussed at home quietly, the way our family discussed everything that involved money. I was wrong about that. My mother had been waiting for an audience. The relatives arrived between 5 and 6 on Saturday evening. There were 9 of them at the table besides me. Wayne and Pamela West, my parents Cameron, Uncle Brent West, and Aunt Carol West, my father's brother and his wife who had driven down from Mansfield, Grandma Eileen, the guest of honor. Aunt Diane Hollister and Uncle Roy Hollister, my mother's sister and her husband from Dublin, and cousin Heather Hollister, Diane's daughter, 26 years old, just signed a lease on her first apartment in German Village, bursting to tell anyone who would listen about it. The toast came at 7. My father stood up, glass in hand, eyes already a little glassy from his second pour. To my mother, he said, 80 years of putting up with Westman. We're sorry. There was a small laugh around the table. My grandmother smiled and shook her head. Cameron raised his glass without looking up from his phone. Aunt Diane complimented the roast. The conversation drifted. Heather's German Village apartment, Uncle Roy's golf league at Westchester, Aunt Carol's new garden. An old story about my grandfather Earl that nobody had heard before. It was for 15 minutes an actual family dinner. Then Heather innocently turned to me. Are you still living at home, Katie? I said, yes, she brightened. Oh, we should talk. I've been looking at rentals myself. The prices are insane right now. Do you mind if I ask what you pay? My mother set her fork down. I felt it before I heard it. The small clink of metal on porcelain, the shift in the room, the way a barometric pressure changes before a storm. My mother set her fork down and turned her head 1 degree to the left toward Heather and 1 degree to the right toward me. Her voice came out conversational. Public. Why don't you tell Heather what you texted me on Tuesday, Katie? She said. Tell everyone here how you interrogated your own mother. Heather's face went uncertain. Uncle Roy's fork paused midair. Grandma Eileen's hand tightened around the stem of her wine glass. My father studied a fixed point on the salt shaker. Cameron finally looked up from his phone. I answered as evenly as I could. I said I had asked for a written breakdown of what my rent was paying for. My mother's hand came down on the table. I want to describe this carefully. She did not slap the table the way an angry woman in a movie slaps a table. She struck it once with the flat of her palm, hard enough that the china rattled, hard enough that Heather flinched, hard enough that everyone at the table understood in the same half-second that the next sentence was going to be something they could not unhear. $1,300 a month, my mother said. And you still dare to complain? You're so ungrateful. I wish we had spent that money raising your brother instead of you." The room went silent. I want you to understand the quality of that silence. It was not the silence of shock. Shock comes with a small inhale. This was the silence of a room that had just been handed a sentence it did not want to be holding. Aunt Diane's face went pale, the color sliding out of her cheeks all at once. Uncle Roy looked at his plate and Carol pressed her napkin to her mouth. Heather, 26 years old, looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Grandma Eileen closed her eyes for one full second. My father said nothing. He kept his eyes on the salt shaker. He did not look at his wife. He did not look at me. He just looked at the salt shaker and breathed. And across the table from me, my brother Cameron, 28 years old, paying nothing. His Tacoma in the driveway, his Apex drop store half deleted. Let the corner of his mouth lift. Just the corner. Just for a half second, his eyes stayed on his plate, but the smirk was there. I saw it. He knew I saw it. He did not look up. No one spoke. No one moved to defend me. No one said, "Pam." The way you say a sister's name when she has gone too far. Aunt Diane, who I would later learn had wanted to say something, did not say it. Her hand stayed in her lap. My mother had been practicing that sentence. I could hear it. It came out too clean. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I did not look at Cameron. I did not look at my father. I did not ask my mother to repeat herself. I did not defend myself. I finished my plate. When the potatoes came around again, I asked my grandmother if she wanted seconds. "Grandma, do you want more? They're really good tonight." She did. I passed the dish. Her hand brushed mine when she took it from me, and she let it rest there a half second longer than the dish required. I did not give my mother the version of me she had prepared for. That was the first thing I took from her. When dessert came out, I declined politely. I helped Aunt Diane clear plates. I thanked my grandmother for the meal one more time, kissed her on the cheek, and walked upstairs to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed for 90 seconds. Then I opened my closet. The hallway closet held 2 suitcases, a gray one I had used for high school class trips, and a burgundy one my mother had bought me for college and never quite let me take. I pulled them both down. I started folding shirts. The folding was almost meditative. Downstairs, I could hear chairs scraping back, the quiet rustle of guests deciding to leave early without saying so. By the time the last car pulled out of the driveway, both suitcases were half full. By morning, they would both be ready to go. I slept 4 hours that night. I woke up before dawn on Sunday, October 26, 2025, and I finished what I had started. I made a small list in my head of what would stay and what would go. The yearbook from my senior year stayed on the shelf. The framed Polaroid of me and Cameron when we were both little, taken at Indian Lake, my father holding the camera at arm's length, stayed on the dresser. The childhood books stayed. The desk under the window stayed. My grandfather Earl's desk, the one I had done 5th grade math on. The crooked closet door stayed crooked. What came with me? Clothes, my laptop, paperwork, the blue folder, a single pair of childhood earrings my grandmother had given me at 13, a worn paperback Ian had pressed into my hands when I was 16, a Wendell Berry book she said I would understand when I was older. I had not understood it at 16. I thought I might understand it now. I left the room the way I had kept it for 22 years. Clean, quiet, dignified. I just took the hangers. The room looked finished, like someone had moved out a long time ago and just gotten around to it. I carried both suitcases down the stairs around 7 in the morning. The gray one bumped the second step the way it always did. My father was already in the kitchen, sitting at the table with his coffee, the way he did on Sundays. He did not look up. My mother was in the den. I could hear her breathing through the wall. That careful, audible breathing she did when she wanted to be heard but not seen. Cameron's door was closed. I set my house key on the counter next to the napkin holder. The key had a green rubber tag on it from my 16th birthday, when my parents had given it to me with a small ceremony at the kitchen table and said, "Welcome to adulthood." I did not say anything. I walked out the front door. As I reached for the door, I heard my father into his coffee say my name just once quietly. Katie. He did not repeat it. I did not stop. I have thought about that a lot. I drove the 20 minutes to Brooke's apartment in Clintonville with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. Brooke had texted me the night before around 11, after she had heard the broad outline of the dinner over the phone. The text said, "Doors unlocked, sheets on the couch, no questions. Take whatever time you need." I parked in front of her building. I carried the gray suitcase up first, then went back for the burgundy one. The lock on her front door turned without resistance. The couch was made up of folded sheets. There was a glass of water on the coffee table. Brooke had left for brunch on purpose to give me space to land. I lay down on the couch in the same clothes I had been folding shirts in the night before. I did not cry. I slept for 4 hours. I did not cry that day. The crying came later, and not for the reasons my mother would have guessed. Monday morning, October 27th, 2025, I went back to work. Lindo saw me before I had even hung up my coat. She did not pry. I told her there was some family stuff and asked if I could keep work compartmentalized for a while. She nodded once and walked back to her desk. That was the end of the conversation. I balanced my drawer to the scent every shift that week. I helped a member close out a CD that had matured. I helped another member set up a new joint checking account with his daughter who had just turned 18, and the daughter signed the signature card carefully like it was a treaty. I watched her do it. I thought about my own signature card, which I had signed at this same window in February. 8 months ago on Wednesday, October 29th, my mother sent 6 in 20 minutes. They escalated from Katie. "Please call me if you're embarrassed to call me. Call me Katie. Call me back." I read them. I did not respond. I blocked her number that night. I did not block my father. He did not text. Friday night, at the end of that first week, Brooke made pasta. We sat at her 2-seat kitchen table. She asked me one question, the only question I would let her ask the whole month. "Do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to pretend it's normal?" I said, "Pretend." She pretended. We watched the Great British Bake Off, the season where everyone's chocolate work keeps melting. I laughed once at a collapsing Soul. It surprised both of us. For the first time in 8 months, my Friday night did not have a rent payment attached to it. The second week was easier than the first. The third week was harder again. My father did not call. My mother sent emails I did not open. Cameron did not contact me at all, which told me everything I needed to know about Cameron. I started looking at studio apartments on Zillow during my lunch break. Clintonville was within reach. Worthington was not. I made a note of which buildings had laundry in the unit. If anyone has ever called you ungrateful for asking where your money was going, leave a comment with the word receipts so I know I'm not alone. The next part is the part I waited 8 months to tell. It was a Tuesday in the middle of November when the next thing happened. Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. 3 weeks after the dinner, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I was at work midday. Linda Voss had asked me to deliver a small stack of printouts to her desk in the back office. I had walked past her desk 100 times before. The back office was a single open room with 5 desks, 2 laser printers, a coffee maker that had never been cleaned, and Linda's corner setup with 2 monitors. Her main monitor was the one she did her loan officer work on. The secondary monitor she used for reports, past due watch lists, audit prep, the kind of internal dashboards a teller like me never needed to touch. Linda was on a phone call when I came in. Her back was to her desk. She had stepped over to the window to take the call, the way she always did when the conversation was sensitive. She had forgotten to minimize her secondary monitor. I crossed to her desk to set the printouts down. The screen was right in front of me. The past due watch list was open. The cursor was hovering on a row about 3 lines down. The row had an address. I saw the address before my eyes were ready to see it. It was my parents' address. The status column on that row read, Payment past due. Auto notice queued. I closed my eyes. I set the printouts on her desk. I turned around. I walked back to my station. I did not look at the screen again. I told no one. I did not log into any system. I did not pull up the account. I did not access anything I was not authorized to access. I just walked back to my window and resumed taking deposits. I saw it for half a second. That was enough. I knew a letter was going to land somewhere on their kitchen counter. I did not know when. I did not need to. After work that night, I walked 4 blocks down to the coffee shop on High Street, the one with the slow Wi-Fi and the chairs that have been in the same spot since 2011. I bought a small drip coffee and sat by the window. I let myself think it through carefully. There was a clean, ethical line, and I needed to know where I was on it. Looking at a screen in passing is not a violation. Walking away from it is, in fact, what I was supposed to do. I had not accessed any account. I had not pulled any records. I had not told anyone. I was not under any obligation to warn my parents that their own account was past due. They were the account holders. They had the same information I had. They had more information than I did. I had paid them $1,300 a month for 8 months, and I had no legal duty to keep paying. None of what was about to happen was my doing. It was theirs. I had been raised on the word family. I was about to learn the word ledger. I knew sitting in that coffee shop that the hardest thing I would do all year was nothing. So that's what I did. For 7 more days, I did nothing. Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. The day before Thanksgiving. I want to tell you what my mother did that afternoon in the same way I learned it later in fragments. Partly from Aunt Diane, partly from my father, mostly from my mother herself. My mother had spent the morning showing a 4-bedroom in Dublin to a couple she had now shown the same house to 3 times without an offer. She came home tired. She made herself a coffee. She walked to the kitchen counter where my father always left the mail. There was a small stack, 2 bills, a clothing catalog, a credit card offer, and a cream-colored envelope she did not recognize at first. The return address was in the upper left corner, a green oak leaf, the words, Buckeye Heritage Credit Union beneath it. She had seen that logo a dozen times in the previous 9 months. She had seen it on her daughter's badge. My mother did not open the envelope standing up. She sat down at the kitchen table. Some letters require a chair. She opened it with a butter knife from the dish rack. She read the header. It said, Notice of Default, Past Due Payment. She read the body. She read it 3 times. Each time the sentences arrived in a different order. None of the orders helped. The account, the letter said, was 25 days past due. The past due amount was $580. There was an assessed late fee of $35. The total cure amount was $615 due immediately, below the cure amount. In a paragraph my mother had read in other people's letters dozens of times over 14 years in real estate, the letter said, Failure to bring the account current may result in additional fees, negative credit bureau reporting, acceleration of the loan, and ultimately foreclosure proceedings on the property securing this line of credit. She had read that paragraph for other people's homes. Tonight she read it for hers. She called my father. He was at a sales call in Marysville. He said he would be home in an hour. His voice was flat. When he got home, he read the letter once. He folded it. He put it back in the envelope. He set it on the table. He sat down across from her and said in a voice I have never heard him use, I told you we should have stopped after the food truck. My mother cried the first crack of the night. It was the first time my father had named the Helilock out loud as a mistake. She had been waiting for him to say it for 18 months without ever asking him to. Now the night the letter arrived, he said it. She put her hand on the envelope again. The green oak leaf. She did the math. My job, my badge, my daily presence at that branch. She convinced herself sitting at that table that I had been watching the account, that I had timed the silence, that I had perhaps called my supervisor and asked for the letter to be sent that afternoon. She was wrong on every single point, but she was too panicked to be right. She turned to my father. She works there, she said. She works there, Wayne. She did this. He did not answer. My mother picked up her phone. The time at the top of the screen read 9:14 p.m. She tapped my contact. She dialed. I did not answer. She called again. I did not answer. By midnight, she had called 14 times. I was at Brooke's kitchen table when the phone started buzzing. I let it buzz. I let it buzz 14 times. Each voicemail came through with the small ding the phone makes when a new message arrives. I did not delete them. I listened to every one of them. I will tell you what I heard. The first 4 calls were the crying calls. The first voicemail was 38 seconds long. My mother was sobbing, half-finished sentences. Katie, Katie, how could you? How could you do it? Katie, please. She had not yet organized her panic into accusation. The crying was real. It was also useless to me because crying without accountability is just performance with tears. The second voicemail was shorter. Just Katie, pick up. Please pick up, Katie. My mother had not cried in front of me in 22 years. She cried 4 times in 20 minutes that night. Brooke sat at the kitchen table across from me. She did not say anything. I had told her the day after the dinner that her job in this story was not to say anything. I did not need a friend who would side with me. I needed a friend who would let me listen to my own life without interruption. Brooke was that friend. The 5th voicemail was a different person. The crying had organized itself. The 5th voicemail was the first screaming voicemail. How dare you? How dare you do this to your family? We took you in. We raised you. We gave you everything. My mother's voice was full and clear now. The accusation had a shape. By the 7th voicemail, the shape had become an indictment. You think this is justice? You think you're clever? You did this. You knew. You knew the whole time. You did this on purpose. I listened to all 5 screaming voicemails. I took them in the way you take in a weather report. Brooke got up quietly and put on a pot of tea. She did not ask me if I wanted any. She just made it. She set a mug in front of me and went back to her chair. My mother said the word family 11 times in those 5 voicemails. I counted. The word had stopped meaning anything specific, somewhere around the 3rd use. Then somewhere around the 10th call, the screaming stopped. The last 5 voicemails were the begging voicemails. My mother was quieter, tired. I could hear in the background my father saying something I could not make out. She was sitting at the same kitchen table she had been sitting at when she called me ungrateful 4 weeks earlier. Katie, please, please pick up. I am so sorry. I love you. I love you. Please. The 14th voicemail was the quietest. Katie, sweetie, please, please. I had never heard my mother whisper a sentence in my life. The 14th voicemail was the first. I listened to all 14. I deleted none. I called no one back. The next morning, Wednesday, November 26th, I got 2 messages. The first was a text from my Aunt Diane. Katie, I should have said something at dinner. I'm sorry. Your mother called me last night. Hysterical. She got a letter from the credit union. I'm telling you, so you're not blindsided. I see it now. Call me when you're ready. Or don't. I read the text twice. I screenshotted it. I added it to the blue folder. My aunt had been at the table on Saturday. Her apology was 4 weeks late and exactly on time. The second message was a voicemail. It came from a number I knew. My grandmother's landline. Grandma Eileen does not text. She does not use a cell phone. When she wants to speak to you, she calls from the brown rotary-style phone on her kitchen wall. The same phone she has had since 1989. The voicemail was 48 seconds long. Her voice was steady, careful, slow. Catherine, this is your grandmother. I should have spoken up at dinner. I did not. That was wrong of me. You are not ungrateful. You have never been ungrateful. Please come visit me when you are ready. I would like to see you. I listened to the voicemail twice. The second time I cried. The first time I cried was the night before dinner. I cried quietly on Brooke's couch while Brooke sat at her kitchen table and pretended very hard to be reading something on her phone. My grandmother had been waiting 80 years to use that voice. She had been saving it for me. I let 3 weeks pass. My mother sent emails I did not open. My father sent a single text on December 2nd that said, "I would like to talk to you when you are ready." "No conditions, Dad." I did not reply right away. I read it 12 times over 3 days. I thought about my father in the kitchen with his coffee on the morning I left, the one syllable he had said, the fact that he had not repeated it. I thought about him folding the letter and putting it back in the envelope. I thought about the line, "I told you we should have stopped after the food truck." On the second Sunday of December, I sent my father a text back. Sunday, December 14th, 10 o'clock a.m. The coffee shop on High Street in Worthington. Just you and Mom. 1 hour. He replied within 4 minutes. "Yes, we will be there." I picked Worthington because it was halfway between Brooke's apartment and Glenmere Lane. I picked the coffee shop because it had 2 doors, 3 exits, large windows, and other people. I picked the table by the front window. I picked it because I wanted to remember the light. I arrived at 9:48. I bought tea and sat down. I set the blue folder on the chair next to me. At 10:03, my parents walked in. My mother first, then my father. They saw me. They walked over. They sat down across from me. There was a third chair empty between us. My mother glanced at it. I did not move it. At 10:11, my brother Cameron walked in. My mother turned deliberately like she had been waiting for him. I asked him to come. She said, "He's family." I did not argue. I gestured to the empty chair. Cameron sat down. He set his phone face down on the table. My father did not see his son's eyes. I had prepared for 2. I could handle 3. I opened the blue folder. I want you to picture what I did next because it is the cleanest scene in this whole story, and I want it to land the way it landed on them. I laid the items on the table one at a time. I did not say anything while I laid them out. The first item was the printout of the 8 signed receipts in order from March through October. The second was a printout of the 8 Zelle screenshots in order with their memo lines visible. The third was the page from the Franklin County Recorder showing the HELOC lien recorded April 17, 2024. Lender Buckeye Heritage Credit Union, $62,000. The fourth was the screenshot of my mother's reply text from October 21st. "You don't get to demand a breakdown like you're auditing your own family." The fifth was a screenshot from Cameron's Instagram from August 2024, the day Grill Cart Columbus launched. Grill Cart Columbus is live. Couldn't have done it without Mom and Dad backing this dream from day one. The sixth was a screenshot from Heather's Instagram story from the night of the dinner, time-stamped 6:48 p.m. before the conflict. The wide shot of the table with me visible at my place setting captioned Grandma E's 80th. The seventh was Aunt Diane's apology text from November 26th. I did not lay down a copy of the notice of default. I did not have one. I did not need one. When everything was on the table, I let the silence sit for 10 seconds. My mother did not look at the folder. She looked at the window. Then she looked at her hands. Then finally she looked at the folder. I did not raise my voice. I told the truth in plain sentences, the way I had practiced in the car. That is $1,400 in rent over 8 months. That is a second mortgage taken out 18 months ago. That is the date it was recorded. That is what Cameron posted about his food truck. That is what you texted me on Tuesday before dinner. That is what Aunt Diane texted me on Wednesday after. I waited for a beat. I was not paying rent. I was carrying your helilock. I was carrying a debt you took out to fund Cameron's businesses. You told 9 people at Grandma Ian's birthday. I was ungrateful for asking what my money was paying for. The answer is on the table. My father said nothing. My mother tried to speak twice and stopped twice. The first attempt was Katie. It wasn't. The second attempt was we didn't. She did not finish either one. Across the table, Cameron looked down at his own Instagram post, the one I had screenshotted, the one he had not deleted in 15 months. He did not look up. The hardest part of telling the truth is watching the other person hear it. I made myself watch. I closed the folder. I slid it back into my bag. I told them 3 things. 1, I would not pay them another dollar for any reason. Not rent, not contribution, not loan, not gift. The arrangement was over. 2, I would not be discussed with extended family. Anyone who calls me ungrateful publicly does not get my presents privately. 3, if they wanted to remain in my life in any meaningful way, they would write Grandma Ian and Aunt Diane apology letters for the dinner. The letters would be handwritten. They would be specific. I would know if they were not because Grandma Ine would tell me. I stood up. I thanked the barista on the way out because that's how I was raised. I did not look back. My mother followed me into the parking lot. I heard her steps before I reached my car. She called my name. Katie, please. Katie. I turned around. I let her catch up. She had her hands out, palms open, the way people do in a hospital corridor when they want a doctor to give them news that has not been given yet. I said, Mom, the meeting was an hour long. The hour is over. I got in my car. I drove away. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat. It was lighter than I expected. I think it had been carrying me for longer than I had been carrying it. I will tell you what happened after the way I learned it in the order I learned it. In early January 2026, my parents listed the house on Glenmere Lane. My mother could not list her own home. Conflict of interest, real estate ethics rules, the same rules she had quoted to me twice growing up. She would have used a colleague at her brokerage, but by January that was no longer an option. In late October, after Heather watched my mother slam the table, Heather had told her own mother. Aunt Diane had told her sister-in-law, Aunt Carol. Carol had told my Uncle Brent. Brent and Carol had been in the early stages of listing their Worthington house with my mother that fall. A sale that would have closed Pam's year and paid out a commission of, depending on how it landed, somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000. By November 14th, Brent and Carol had quietly pulled the listing and gone with another agent. By December, 2 referral leads my mother had been working since Summer had stopped returning her emails. By the end of the year, my mother had lost approximately $18,000 in expected commission income at the exact moment she could least afford it. Word in suburban Ohio real estate moves at the speed of group chats. My mother knew this. She had used the speed to her advantage for 14 years. She watched it move against her in slow motion. The house went up with a competing agent named Linda Estrander, a quiet, professional woman my mother had once gossiped about at her own brokerage's holiday party. The asking price was $3,900. The listing was light on photos of the second floor. I noticed the house sold on Friday, February 27, 2026. The closing price was $3,200 under list, but enough. After the main mortgage payoff, the Helilock payoff, and the closing costs and commissions, my parents walked away with somewhere around $5,000 in residual equity. They downsized to a 2-bedroom rental in Hilliard. My father bought a smaller car. My mother did not buy a new car. Cameron did not come to the closing. He had moved to Cleveland in early January with a girlfriend whose first name my mother could not reliably remember when she mentioned it to Aunt Diane on the phone. His Instagram had been quiet since the confrontation. The Tacoma had been sold to a dealership in Ashtabula for less than he owed on it. He did not tell anyone. My father called me the week of the closing. He did not ask for anything. He told me they had signed the papers. He told me he had written the letter to Grandma Eileen. He told me he had given it to her in person. He said my mother had written hers too, but had not yet delivered it. He said he was sorry. He said it 3 times. He did not ask me to come visit. I appreciated that more than I could explain. I told him I would think about it. We left it there. On Saturday, March 14, 2026, I signed a 1-year lease on a 480-foot studio apartment in Clintonville. Second floor of a converted Craftsman, large windows facing east, original wood floors, a tiny kitchen with a window over the sink. Rent $1,150 a month. I did the math once in my head before I signed, and then I stopped doing the math. Brooke helped me move in. We carried the gray suitcase up the stairs first, then the burgundy one. I did not have many other boxes. The studio took us about 3 hours, including the trip to a coffee shop on the way for sandwiches. Linda Voss put me up for promotion to junior lending assistant the week after I moved in. The effective date was May 1st, pending continued performance. She did not say much about it. She said, "You're ready." And then she gave me a folder of training materials and walked back to her desk. That weekend, I painted the bedroom wall pale yellow, not white. The roller went up and down in the slow rhythm I remembered from helping my mother paint her own living room when I was 16, except that I was painting alone, and the yellow was a color I had picked myself. The 2 suitcases, empty, went on the top shelf of the closet. The closet door closed on the first try. The blue folder went into a small fireproof file box on the closet floor. I did not look at the receipts again. I did not need to. I painted the wall on a Sunday. By Sunday night, the room was mine in a way no room had ever been. The next weekend, I drove out to Worthington to see my grandmother. Eileen made tea. We sat on her couch. We did not talk about my mother. We did not talk about the house. We talked about my grandfather Earl, about the year he taught her to drive a manual transmission on a back road in Licking County. We talked about my new studio. She wanted to know about the yellow paint. I described it. She listened the way she always listened, with her head tilted slightly and her hands folded in her lap. When the tea was almost gone, she said very quietly, "I'm proud of you, Catherine. I want you to know that. I should have said it years ago." I cried quietly. She pretended not to notice. When I left, she hugged me at the door the way she had always hugged me, with her hands flat against my back and her chin on my shoulder. She told me to drive carefully. She told me to come back next weekend if I had time. I told her I would. If you've ever been the child whose love was priced and whose brother was free, you already know the room I am describing. Tell me about yours in the comments. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one. Calm ones with receipts. I drove home through the long Ohio dusk, the kind of late March evening when the sky takes its time about turning. I did not turn on the radio. The windows were cracked. The wind smelled like wet pavement and the first edge of spring. I thought about my old bedroom on Glenmere Lane, the pale blue walls, the desk under the window, the closet door that never closed right. And I felt nothing for it. Not anger, not loss, just the calm distance of a place that had stopped belonging to me a long time before I admitted it. I did not take revenge. I just stopped subsidizing the people who told me I owed them everything. The room they charged me for is gone. The receipts are mine. The bedroom I own now is one I painted yellow, and no one is allowed to charge me to sleep in it. My mother had called me ungrateful at a table full of relatives with a slam of her hand on her own mother's birthday dinner in front of my grandmother, who had loved me for 22 years, and finally said so on a voicemail from her kitchen wall. She had not known that Saturday night that the daughter she was humiliating had been carrying her secret for 8 months. She had not known that the credit union she was wiring her future to was the same one that wrote my paychecks. She had not known that a $4 folder from a Target in Polaris would weigh more than her career. She knows now. The drive home took 40 minutes. I did not turn on the radio. I did not need to.